I'm Professor Ron Kneebone. This is the School of Public Policy. Today the school released a paper on the topic of homelessness in Alberta. One of the important results that we found is that there are twice as many shelter users, homeless shelter users in Calgary than there are in Edmonton. Almost all shelter users in the province are in those two cities, but there are twice as many in Calgary as there are in Edmonton. That's a remarkable fact because those two cities, Calgary and Edmonton, are so similar in all respects, and yet there are twice as many homeless shelter users in Calgary than in Edmonton. So this raises some questions. Why is that? And also, why is it that the fluctuations in homeless shelter use in Alberta are all explained by fluctuations in Calgary? And the moral of that story is what our facts show is that if you want to understand homelessness in Alberta, you have to understand homelessness in Calgary. If our facts now raise the question, why are there so many more homeless shelter users in Calgary than in Edmonton? And why is it that homelessness fluctuates so much more in Calgary than in Edmonton? We need to figure out why that is. The fluctuations of homeless shelter use is very high in Calgary. It rises, it falls, it rises, it falls. In Edmonton, it doesn't change very much at all. Why is this? So we started to look at some other facts. One of the facts that we looked at was trying to measure the number of affordable housing units available in Edmonton versus Calgary. It turns out there are twice as many rental accommodations in Edmonton per 1,000 people than there are in Calgary. This is extraordinary because, again, these two cities are very similar in all respects, except with regard to the number of homeless shelter users and the number of rental accommodations that are available. This suggests that there's a link between the two. So we investigated further. The next thing that we looked at was how in-migration responds to changes in the labor market in the two cities. It turns out that when Edmonton booms relative to elsewhere, relatively few people move to Edmonton. There are some, but not nearly so much as in Calgary. Calgary is a magnet for people. When the job market improves here, people flood to Calgary looking for jobs. And now we can put all these facts together into an explanation. And our explanation goes like this. An economic boom in Calgary relative to elsewhere encourages people to move to Calgary looking for a job. When they get here, they find out that there's very few rental units available for them to move into. They end up in homeless shelters. So what we've done in the study is we've revealed a lot of facts, and we've provided an interpretation of those facts that for which we have a lot of evidence to support. Namely that an economic boom in Calgary encourages people to move here, but when they move here, they don't find a place to live. They end up in shelters. So what do we do about it? Clearly the problem is a lack of affordable housing units in Calgary. So the answer is pretty obvious as well. We need to increase the number of rental accommodations in this city. And to its credit, this is what the Alberta government has been doing. Working in conjunction with the Calgary Homeless Foundation, they have been working hard to increase the number of rental accommodations in this city. But we feel that there needs to be more that needs to be done. And in particular, we need to somehow figure out why the private sector is not doing its bit. So why is it that the private sector builds so many more rental accommodations in Edmonton than in Calgary? Is it something different about the two cities? There are lots of possibilities here. A builder in Calgary versus Edmonton pays the same federal taxes. They pay the same provincial taxes. But what's different about the two cities might have something to do with the policies of the cities of Edmonton and Calgary. These are questions that need to be investigated. We can also look at various measures, and the school has recently published a paper that emphasizes these possibilities. The government at both the municipal and provincial level can actually implement different policies to incent the private sector to get more involved in building rental accommodations. We would encourage the government to look in those directions because if you involve the private sector in this problem, we're going to come up with a solution much more quickly than if we don't. I'm Ron Kneebone. This is the School of Public Policy. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Tim Richter. I'm President and CEO of the Calgary Homeless Foundation. I think, I think what Professor Kneebone in the School of Policy Studies has done is really important in helping us understand the mechanics of homelessness in Alberta, because it shows how people are moving in and around the province, and the concentration of the problem seems to be here in Calgary in terms of the amount of people gravitating here for, as a result of the economy. Well, as Ron said in his introduction, he said that, the government didn't really know some of the essential mechanics of homelessness as they built their plan, and now this is important research that helps them form their response. They didn't probably understand that at the provincial level that the problem in Alberta is concentrated largely here in Calgary. Right, so that informs a provincial response. When you look municipally, he raises some really important questions about what's different between Calgary and Edmonton in terms of the rental market and the zoning issues, or whatever the municipal government level might be going on, that makes it far easier for rental accommodation, far more readily available in Edmonton versus Calgary, which leads to the dynamic of having more homeless people in shelters here in Calgary than in Edmonton. So there's an important issue for the municipal government to address. And then when you look further afield to solutions, there's a challenge for the government of Canada, because one of the recommendations came out of a previous paper was low-income housing tax credit. Well, that's a change to federal tax policy. So this is what Ron is highlighting is a challenge for 3 levels of government. It's a particular challenge for the city of Calgary to really look at what's going on here, and it's a particular challenge for the province of Alberta, because now you've got provincial policy issue that is disproportionately impacting one community.